Greetings and welcome to another lecture in comparative psychology. We're going to continue talking about play, this time talking about the various types and functions of play. So there are three basic types of play, and they all may have slightly different functions, as much as we can say that any type of play has functions, since we just got finished deciding that play is a behavior that has no purpose, or I guess I suppose it could have a function but not a purpose, but we're kind of splitting hairs. At any rate, first type of play is object play. Again, these things are named exactly what they are. Where animals play with an object. They figure out what they can do with it. Can they roll it around? Can they pick it up? Can they bite it? Can they squish it? Can they divide it into different things? Can they chase it? If they drop it, what will it do? If they throw it up in the air? If they let it go, will it float around? It's playing with an object. And anybody, quite frankly, who's been anywhere near a cat certainly has seen them play with objects. And it is pretty much playing. I mean, you could tell that it doesn't seem to have a purpose for them whacking that toy all over the ground. And in fact, other big cats do much the same thing, as do lots of other different types of animals. Object play is not unusual in the animal kingdom. There's a lot of discussion about, tool use. This isn't exactly tool use. They're not using the object to do something. They're just doing essentially object exploration. They're learning what an object is, whether it's a rock or a piece of grass or a stick, or in the case of a cat or a dog, a ball or a chew toy or whatever. They're learning what it is. Now, the usual thought behind this, particularly for things like cats and dogs and other predators, is that they're basically generalizing the behavior that they do with these objects to later prey. And indeed, we do tend to see a lot of these types of play in animals that are predators. And it may partly be because predators have more time to play, because particularly when they're young, because they go out, they find quite a bit of food, they may not need to hunt again for a while. Grazers, herbivores, very often have to eat almost constantly to make sure that they get enough food. But the other reason that we may see this more in predators, other than them having more time and maybe wanting to generalize this to hunting behavior later, is that play can be very costly. I mean, all kinds of play can, but particularly this play. Because what they're doing here is they're focusing on an object. Okay? They're focusing on an object. They're focusing on something that's inanimate. And when they're focused on that object, it is quite possible that they could become something else's prey. That they could become, they're so distracted they don't notice if a predator is sneaking up or if something along those lines is happening. So yes, we always are talking about benefits and costs, and one of the costs here is a pretty big one, because the cost is that the individual could wind up being eaten. Talk about your cost. Other types of play are social play. Social play, not surprisingly, is playing with others. And there's a number of reasons why social play could turn out to be useful. Maybe more useful than object play is, because social play might be useful in any group that lives in a social unit or has some sort of hierarchy. Because first of all, it could lead to forming social bonds. The animals learn very quickly maybe who's more dominant, who's less dominant, and they learn maybe where they fit in the society, or they form bonds without ever having to really fight for real. They play fight. They play wrestle. They play chase each other. They play do whatever else they're doing. And it allows them to learn about others without the danger that fighting as adults would do. It also allows to fine-tune physical skills. I mean, there's one thing if you're, chasing a toy or chasing a rock or chasing a leaf or something, but it's quite another to actually be chasing another animal or wrestling with it or play biting or play fighting or, all those sorts of things. They're going to learn their physical skills, and it might also help them learn their cognitive skills. They learn how to think. They learn how to decide. They learn how to, how to deal with other individuals. I've had dogs, and the dogs would very often run around. They'd run around the yard, they'd run around the tree, and eventually one dog would learn that it wouldn't have to chase that other dog all the way around, that it could head it off as the pass, as we used to say. It could cut across the yard and intercept it partway through, and so they're learning how to think. They're learning how to maneuver in their environment. They're learning spatial skills. They're learning a lot of skills, particularly for predators, that might generalize into not only being able to hunt prey, but also being able to fit into this social hierarchy, or knowing, it could feed back to the aggression part. When you're playing, it's not real. How do they know it's not real? How do they know that it's playing and it's not actual fighting? If you've watched dogs play together, a lot of their play, it can be pretty loud, and there could be a lot of teeth, and there could be a lot of one dog pinning down another, and a lot of wrestling, a lot of, and it's difficult to tell sometimes as humans whether they're playing or whether they're fighting. And indeed, it might also be difficult for the other animals. There are some things that they can look for. For instance, when animals are playing, their behavior tends to be exaggerated. It's a lot bigger than it might be normally. Normally, if one wolf, say, is attacking another, they're going to make it as subtle as possible. But when they're playing, it's great big, huge leaps and bounds, and sometimes it's huge snarling and everything else. But it's way out of proportion, and it might also be in the wrong order. Hunting or fighting or whatnot very often follows a particular order. It's almost like a dance. And what could be going on here is behavior kind of in the wrong order. You're not supposed to do A before you do B, but in playing, let's do C, and then we'll go to A, and then we'll do C again, and then maybe B. And so they understand this, that they agree that it's play. There's also what are called play markers. And these are behaviors or other communication that shows that this is not a serious fight, that this is a play fight, okay? That this is play wrestling, that this is play chasing. Again, talking about dogs, but we can see it with other animals. Very often dogs, when they're playing, they'll be wagging their tail like crazy, or, they have different positions of their ears. If you watch the wolf video, you can see that too. The ears and the tail tell a lot. And so a lot of times with playing, they may use the submissive behaviors that they did as used as puppies, or they may, do dominant behaviors that are so dominant that they're just crazy. Dogs in particular do a behavior. I have a video at the end of this slide, which I'm going to show you, that's basically a long video of dogs playing. And it shows a lot of the techniques, a lot of the signals they give each other. And one of the big signals that dogs are playing, one of their biggest play markers, is what's called a play bow. A play bow is when a dog will put its front end down, usually resting its front legs completely on the ground with its hind end still up, often with tail waving madly. And so they'll go down and they'll do a play bow. And that's a sign, literally, that they're playing, that they don't need this. They'll do the play bow, and then, they'll charge at another dog, or they'll do a play bow, and then they'll, go and jump on them, and it tells the other dog, this is play. This is not real. Okay? I'm not really attacking you. I'm playing with you. And the other dog will hopefully understand this. And one of the problems at dog parks is that they don't always understand this. Is when you have dogs that aren't properly socialized, that haven't learned what a play bow is, that haven't learned how to play bite, how to play wrestle, and they may actually bite when they're playing, bite too hard or wrestle too hard. I have a cat right now that does not know how to play bite and does not know how to play use claws. So it's difficult sometimes to play with him. I'd really like to find him another cat that could teach him in a cat fashion, which is usually by biting back harder at times, that, this is not an acceptable way to play. And if you have dogs that aren't well socialized as puppies, they may not learn these things, and they may freak out when they have all these dogs running at them because they don't understand that it's play. They can't read the markers. There are also sometimes role reversals, where an older animal will let a younger animal act dominant over it. Or, when an older animal is playing with a younger animal, then the older animal, won't play as hard as they might with a younger. I've seen this also with size differences, with size differences in dogs. My parents had a 60-pound dog and they had a 12-pound dog, and the 12-pound dog thought it was boss. And the 60-pound dog didn't mind. The 60-pound dog would lay down, and the 12-pound dog would come and like grab the 60-pound dog's jowls and just yank and growl and yank and growl and grab her neck and yank and growl. And the bigger dog would just tolerate it. She didn't mind. If it got too hard, she'd pin the other dog down very carefully and be like, hey, you know, that was kind of a real bite. So there's a lot of role reversals. And the question is, why do they do it? And part of the reason why, well, if you're the biggest, strongest, most dominant animal, who are you going to play with? Okay? You got nobody to play with. You don't have any equals. If you can only play with equals, why is a subordinate going to play with you? You're likely, the subordinate's going to be afraid you're going to beat the crap out of them, because that's generally what the dominant animal does. And so the idea here is that this sort of reversal allows animals then to have partners to play with. Otherwise, they don't. You don't pull your punches, nobody plays with you. If you are a, college-level basketball player and you want to play a pickup game with 11-year-olds, why would they play with you if you're just going to beat their butt every time? So animals seem to do the same thing. Here's the video, by the way, of dogs playing. It's a very long video. You don't have to watch all of it, but it's a really good video in terms of the signals and how dogs communicate with one another and the different ways they have play markers and decide they want to play. The third type of play is locomotor play. And locomotor play is just what it sounds like. It's movement. Now, this is solitary. This is not playing with others. But animals will sometimes just, run around all by themselves. Speaking of my cat, he does that. Well, he'll just do what's sometimes called the zoomies. And they'll just run all over the place, or leap, or play, or dig, or jump. And it may be kind of a workout. We see a lot of this in younger animals. And so we know when we look at when animals play, and we look at the state of their brain, for instance, that a lot of animals play when they're young, and they also play at the same time that their brain is developing. And play can actually help the brain develop. There's an increase in cerebellar synapse formation. Well, the cerebellum is used for movement and precision. And so it would make sense that when the cerebellum is developing, you want to work it out as much as possible to have the most synapses, to have the best developed cerebellum. And play could very well do that. Play with an object, play with another, play with oneself. Along with muscle fiber development. When muscles are growing in a very young animal, it makes sense for that animal to play and work those out and hopefully build up more. So we have the three types of play. We have object play, social play, locomotor play. They're all named what they are, and they all probably serve the same purposes. To an extent, anyway. Working out the body, working out the mind, working out relationships, working out the environment. So, yeah, I mean, when they say that play doesn't have a purpose, it doesn't have an obvious purpose. But it may indeed have a not quite so obvious purpose. I have one more video I want to show you. I kind of joke that this is an example of all three types of play. You get playing with objects, you get playing with others, and you get locomotor play. And it's an example in dolphins. And it's kind of interesting because at the end I like to joke that there's a little bit of recreational drug use. But yeah, maybe. At any rate, here's the video. Remember, these are all posted on Blackboard if you want to click on them, or you can copy or copy from here. By the way, I do want to point out on this video that this is from a BBC series where sorry, that was my cat doing a zoomie. This is from a BBC series where They basically make robotic models of animals in the environment and put the animal in the environment thinking, oh, we're going to sneak up on the animal, which is ridiculous because they may visually look like an animal in the environment, but they aren't. They don't sound like them. Dolphins use their sonar, their echolocation. Dolphins can hear that that's a machine, that that's not a real animal. That doesn't fool them in the slightest. It doesn't smell like a real animal for land animals. It doesn't sound like it. It doesn't move like it. It's a case sort of human hubris thinking, well, we're visual, so if you make it visual for them, it'll be fine. So it's not surprising what the dolphins wind up doing to these objects, and you'll have to watch the video to find out.